Hello and welcome to ELMO's latest webinar, Payroll Integration Without the Headache, making HR, payroll and rostering time and attendance, RTA, work together. It's wonderful that you've all logged on to join us today. Um, we are okay. Sorry, yes, we are going. We are recording. We are recording right now. So thank you for joining. We will send a copy of the recording to everyone post this. I can see some people just ask that question. As we are meeting from various locations, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are all meeting. For me, that is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present as early innovators and acknowledge their significant contributions to science and technology throughout land, water, and culture. So before we start, a couple of things. You're in listen only mode, so you can hear us, but we can't hear you. As I said, you can definitely post any questions in the chat. We have a couple of people helping us out with questions today, so you can ask questions throughout, but we'll also hopefully have time for some questions at the end. Our session will run for about an hour. And we are going to send out some resources at the end of today. So if you miss it, you have to jump off. You'll have both the recording and also a PDF download, which summarizes today's session. So, why are you here? You're joining because you're HR, payroll, and business leaders who want to understand more about integrating payroll with other software. We get it, it can feel complicated, and we won't lie to you, sometimes it is. So, that doesn't mean it's not solvable. So, you can expect to hear a little bit more on what makes it complex and why it feels complex and what it takes to make it work. You're going to hear from our speakers who have a combined total of, I think, around 15, 20 years working with payroll and know what a good end-to-end experience looks like. The goal is to leave today knowing what to think about, what to ask, and how to prepare your organization for a smooth payroll integration. So let's meet our speakers. First, we have Barry Campbell. Barry is a solutions architect at ELMO. He bridges the gap between complex client requirements and innovative payroll solutions. He brings a deep technical expertise and strategic insight to help enterprise and mid-market customers achieve seamless, scalable payroll integrations that drive efficiency and compliance. And Matt Reyes is a technical solutions consultant at ELMO. Matt thrives on solving complex challenges and designing tailored technical solutions that enhance operational efficiency. His expertise spans payroll system integrations, automation, and data accuracy across HR and finance environments. So let's get started. Let's break the ice. We like to break the ice with these webinars. Quick question to you both. What is your favorite app?
I'm going to go first, Barry. Hey guys. Yeah, look, my favorite app is at the moment is WeMoney. I can connect pretty much all my finances in my bank accounts there, investments, super, and it just gives me a good understanding of where I'm at. So I think that's for me. So yeah, but I like them.
Matt, you are a tiny bit fuzzy for me. So
Aussie?
yeah, yeah, I've
Is
got
that
yeah, I
better?
can see.
Is it better now?
That's better, I think.
Okay.
Guys, let us know in the chat if that's better.
All right. Um, I'll repeat that again. Yeah, so my favorite app at the moment is WeMoney, and it just allows me to integrate all my finances, my super, my investments, all in one app. And so I've been really enjoying that.
Fab. And Barry?
Whereas Matt gives a nice grown-up answer, I'm just a huge nerd, so I like Reddit. I spend all my time on the Reddit app. If you've ever used it.
We like payroll and nerd in general, Barry, so that's all good. Let's start with a quick poll. I forget that I was actually in charge of the poll, so let's launch that. Why are you here today, guys? Got a few options on the list. You have your own rostering, time and attendance, and payroll, and you're thinking about integrating to a HRIS like ELMO, exploring new payroll and how that would integrate with existing systems, or you're exploring whole new systems and how that might integrate with an HRS, or you're just here to learn. I'm having put together this today. I can definitely tell you that you will be learning something. Lots of different results. Oh, it just goes so quickly with the little like ticker, but it seems like like over half are here to learn. So that's cool. But then there's definitely a few who are actively, looking at integrating options, which is cool to see. Great. I will end that now. Thanks, guys. All right, so the good news is no matter what option you're here for today, there is an integration solution to suit you. So let's start with the most important question. Sorry, I'm just going to stop sharing that poll now. And that is why should you integrate your payroll, HR, and RTA software?
So I can speak to that, Elise. So I've been fortunate or unfortunate to do probably everything there is to do in payroll, from being a payroll officer, a trainee, a payroll manager, and doing what I currently do now. So I'm a huge advocate for integrated systems for various reasons. Some of the biggest ones are improved accuracy and to help reduce errors. If you're running a manual pay process, you know how time consuming and easy to make mistakes it can be from fat fingers or mistyped entries. So yeah, integrating your RTA, payroll, and HR software can really help stop that from happening. It can help make your payroll processes hugely efficient compared to what they are now. If we're putting the emphasis on the employees to enter the timesheets and the leave or whatever they're doing, the managers can approve it and payroll are processing and checking. It just makes things a lot more efficient. We can help strengthen your compliance and mitigate some of that risk, and that can be from HR processes to do with fatigue management, that kind of thing. Or it can be as simple as interpreting awards correctly and the same every time. Pulling all these systems together can also help improve your reporting and help you make better data-driven decisions because we can get a lot more data out when we have these systems all working together. And finally, we can also improve the experience for the employee. Your employees will love it a lot more if they're enjoying doing what they're doing as well.
Great answer. Matt, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I hope you guys can hear me a bit better now. Yeah, no, look, I agree with Barry in terms of a lot of things that I see from the technical side of things and the integration side of things. Those are some of the key things that will allow us to improve some of the employee experience, the data accuracy, reduce time errors. You can spend more of your time doing the things that actually matter for you. So definitely agree with that.
Perfect. And why, and I'm making a little bit of an assumption saying, why does an integration feel so complex? There might be people going, it doesn't feel complex, but I think overall it feels complex. And so what would you say the three biggest challenges organizations have when they start exploring an integration?
Sure, I'll take this one, Barry. Look, there's a couple of things that are on top of my mind. Three of them is going to be data mismatches and silos. The second one is legacy systems and customization, and the other one is going to be people and processes. When I talk about data mismatches, I'm talking about different vendors or different applications interpreting things differently. One system might interpret it another way. It might be called a different field or something, and another system might do the same thing. And so the trick here is understanding what those different systems are, what they do, understanding the processes and the workflows is kind of important in a lot of these things as well. When the second thing is to talk about legacy systems and customization. So a lot of us are moving away from technology that it's quite old. It has different functionalities. It has different functions. And so understanding what they are, what it currently does is important in kind of identifying where you want to move from there. There's ways to customize legacy applications or legacy systems, but this is where we need to be able to kind of talk to other business units internally to identify that. So for instance, reaching out to IT or reaching out to finance or reaching out to marketing to understand what processes are involved around that. And the last thing, obviously, people and process, change management. That's also one of the key things that we need to identify. What processes are we currently doing that is causing friction? Understanding what that friction looks like will give us an understanding of the employee journey, and then it gives us the ability to then start making decisions based out of those things. Because at the end of the day, if you're using old technology and you're using different processes and procedures, it may not apply to current technology. And so
we need to find ways to adapt to that. And yeah.
And I think you kind of sort of leaning into the answer to this question as you say that, because how do we encourage, and by the we I mean Elmo, encourage customers or prospects to overcome that change management process?
So yeah, I can talk a bit on that, Elise. So one of the huge things that we encourage is collaboration. Now, such a simple term, but means so much. So that's collaboration between the vendor and Elmo in this case, and our customer, but it also means collaboration with different business units internally. IT have to work with payroll, finance, HR, who all have to work with each other as well. Well, again, we as Elmo like to make sure that everyone is understanding of processes and workflows, because integrating your software can be a huge change. Everything's in your head, and we're trying to create a system where we can provide some automation and some process improvements. So understanding how each step in the process, whatever that can be, from as simple as a timesheet flowing through to payroll, or as a HR process for performance management, that kind of thing. So, understanding those workflows and processes are very important. And internal enablement is very important as well. So not only are we ensuring that our payroll, HR, IT, finance teams have the ability to do what's required, we have to train our employees to use these softwares as well. Because if the employees don't pick it up, then we have a problem. And one of Elmo's big sayings is reimagine what's possible. Simply saying, you don't know what you don't know. Let us help you get to know what you need to know.
Yeah, that's the don't know what you don't know is like pivotal, I think, especially when you're dealing with so many different business units and what's important and what they use compared to what you think is important, especially between HR and payroll is obviously going to be it's probably going to be different. So we can imagine that sometimes because of that complexity, Matt, integration projects can stall or they can don't want to say fail, but knock it off the ground. So how can
Yeah.
teams overcome these roadblocks early?
Look, I think one of the key things, to understand that roadblock is, and it's probably going to come with the article that we're going to provide after this, but understanding the source of truth. Here at Elmo, we are centered around employee data and employee information, and that connects to just about everything. Payroll, RTA. And so understanding the source of truth, where that's coming from, is key to be able to drive that flow between the different systems together. And this is where we kind of recommend that you need to speak to IT and finance, because everyone has a different workflow, everyone has a different process, and going through and understanding and taking the time where that is. Because at the end of the day, sometimes IT might be the source of truth. It could be the way that you log into your system. That could be the source of truth. And if we're going through and sourcing out different applications and systems, we need to understand that flow and that workflow. The other thing is resources internally. Having the right resources internally to be able to execute these integrations and be able to connect things together. And this is important, that you need to reach out to IT and other business units to be able to understand how we can move data from one to the other. And again, it's key to understand the source of truth, because that is the source of truth is employees. The other thing is one of the big things that we find during implementations and projects is we're using the same processes, expecting the same, a different result. So we need to adapt to what that new technology can bring. You might be doing the same things again and again and expecting, an amazing result, but we need to, adapt to what that new technology is. And I think that's really key to understanding what that looks like. And I think when you start sourcing out the different business units and asking questions about how processes and workflows run, you'll start to identify the friction. You'll start to identify where the source of truth might come from. And there's an example where there was a project that we're working on that there was two sources of truth, and it was overriding the systems that were in play. And so that was the key. And they were, mocking their heads and going, okay, well, what's wrong? Why is this not right? It's always constantly updating with something else. And this is where that matters, is understanding where the source of truth. And then you can then start mapping that employee journey throughout your environment.
I think the level of complexity of like that I'm really hearing here is how many teams you probably have to get involved, because you really want to make sure like that source of truth and understanding who owns that is pivotal. And I imagine that every team would have a potentially different answer on
Yeah.
that. Barry, did you want to need or want to add anything to that?
No, I think Matt covered it very well. But yeah, the biggest thing that I've seen personally, with and that causes projects to fail, is just lack of adoption. Everyone's involved on making sure that these new systems, these new processes, are adopted and taken up. Yeah.
That doesn't quite segue into my next question, but sort of does. And I don't know if I'm thinking it specifically about Elmo, but I want to talk about the finance team and their role in the business, because this is a project like this is a big project. It will take resources, both people and dollars. So you may need to sell that in as a business case to your finance team. From your guys' opinion, how can HR and payroll leaders like take finance on the journey to get them on board with a project like this?
First of all, I touched on it earlier. Risk mitigation and compliance. Especially when it comes to paying your employees, as we see in the news every day, we want to be getting that right. And having integrated processes and softwares can really take you in a huge leap into getting that right. We want to reduce those costly payroll errors, under calculation of super, paying people the wrong rate, that kind of thing. And yeah, kind of pulling everything together and having defined processes can really help with that.
I might add something to that, Barry. Yeah, look, from a lot of things that I've seen is more the strategic side of things as well. Often when we try to approach finance, they want to see the value of what it's going to bring to I guess to the business. One of the key things is having the right data and creating data-driven decisions based out of that. And so once we have a way of integrating the systems together and understanding where our employees are, we have a better way of understanding where we can put our resources into in terms of from our strategic value. And on to finance and letting them know that, we can improve this by having these metrics because our systems are talking together. One of the other key things is it's going to improve employee experience. You don't want people wasting their time logging onto multiple different systems at a time. It just causes friction. And so those key things as well will add to the value that you can kind of project back to finance there.
Yeah. Yeah, quantifying those hidden costs is a massive you don't realize how much time like administrative tasks can take you, especially if it's something you've always done. Not a bit off topic, but we do have a resource that we can send out after around like that calculates that for you for an ROI calculator and how much time you might spend doing specific tasks and how much that might save you later on. So moving across to what good looks like, you've both worked with many clients across different industries. We are going to talk specifically about an aged care example in a minute, but to you, what does a successful HR payroll and rostering integration actually look like in practice?
So I've had many, fortunately, successful and implementations that work a lot with integrating all the softwares together as well. So first up, cooperation between each set of stakeholders is essential. Everyone has to come to the table. Everyone has to work together. You're all coming towards a common goal, and we all want to achieve that goal. So it seems simple to say, but cooperation is a massive part of a successful implementation or integration. What can also help hugely is having champions in place. So whether that be your payroll champion, your HR champion, your rostering champion, whatever it is, someone that can help drive the rollout, the training, and the integration of these softwares just makes for a much smoother experience. And I know Matt has something he loves about what makes a successful integration.
You know it too well. Look, listen, from my perspective, look, there's a couple of things like that builds a successful integration or project. And we kind of touched a lot of this already, and it's just understanding the business units. But one key thing is just having an open conversation and an honest open conversation with the vendors that you're working with. I think that's quite key. With Elmo, obviously we have implementations and different business units internally, and we work closely together and collaborate. And I think is a big key in making sure things are successful. Um, and Earlier in this conversation, we talked about understanding the workflow, understanding the processes, understanding where that friction might be. And I think those are key to understanding who drives what from the business units. Tying that all together will just give us a better understanding of where we're at and where we want to go. And I think for success to happen, um, making having these open conversations internally for your business, but also with your vendors, will allow us to potentially make workarounds that might not exist, or solutions that potentially we can kind of create because you've identified the frictions internally in terms of the business units, and you presented that to Elmo, for instance, and we can go out and with our expertise internally, we can go have a look at what ways we can kind of solve those problems. And I think that is probably one of the biggest keys that I kind of implore you guys to do.
And Barry, are you able to talk us through a real example? A real example?
I am definitely. So this one was fairly recently in the care industry. And so this customer came to us with quite a manual, paper-driven, email-driven process for their pays. Um, but they came to us for Elmo HR and Elmo Payroll with our award interpretation. But they were also implementing software and ERP called Nightingale at the same time, who I'm sure many of you will have heard of before. But how we ended up with this customer who had a fantastic experience is their employee journey starts in Elmo HR, and they had various Elmo HR modules, very customizable. But the employees would be recruited via Elmo HR. They would be onboarded via Elmo HR. There's a self-onboarding process. Once those records are complete, they populate payroll. We complete the payroll record, then Nightingale comes in and it grabs the information it needs to present in the ERP, in this case, the employee basic details, leave balances, and email address, for example. So the employee's journey in this case is they clock the start and end times within Nightingale. They finish that timesheet for the week or fortnight. That pushes into Elmo Payroll, which runs the award interpretation and produces the pay as it has to, which is then checked by payroll. Then we pay the employees, close the pay. But then Nightingale can then grab that payroll information, not for the GL, the GL would come separately, but it can grab that timesheet costing information to put it back into the ERP to record that against funding sources, budgets, etc. for their customers. So full circle integration that worked amazingly in this for this customer.
Love that. And what can attendees today, Barry, learn from that example?
Um, it Payroll is hard, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. We can make it easier. We can put things in place. We can work with you. We can do lots of fantastical things that make payroll easier, which is why we're here at the end of the day. I
I love
think
that word, Barry. Fantastical.
fantastical.
Amazing. So you guys have both mentioned and the different business units that have to be involved. And I think I heard IT being a first point of call, Who else would you need to potentially speak to? Like, what other business units would you suggest to the people attending today to get involved?
Well, I'd take that one, Barry. Look, if you have the ability, if you have project management team, speak to the project management team. Procurement team is one that you need to speak to as well. Um, uh, Again, from a procurement standpoint, understanding that process will just help you drive some of the conversations that you have with your vendors that you're dealing with. Yeah, obviously we mentioned HR, we mentioned payroll, finance, and IT, but IT is key. IT will help you move your data from one system to another. So I think having those conversations with them is important as well. But yeah, Barry, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think especially in the care industry as well, it can be hugely important to get it depends what you call this team or people, but the GM of services, the kind of person that runs the overall part of your service and part of the industry, because they can help push and help your employees and managers adopt these new processes, which can ensure for a much smoother experience as well.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned before, like how the complexity with a project like this is understanding who to get involved, what type of data you want, and bring those parts of the business together to align on a project, which is complex in itself. So if that does feel overwhelming today, like that is what Elmo does, is help you understand that in those scoping sessions, who needs to be involved, what kind of systems you're dealing with. I personally feel overwhelmed, but it's not my not my sector, but still, if you are feeling like that. So, I know a lot of you were joining today just to learn, but some of you are thinking about integration. And I saw a couple of questions pop up. I think there's a few people answering for them, but you can do any variety, I guess, of options, whether you have an existing payroll or RTA system and you want to integrate with the HR, or you're looking for a new payroll solution and you want to integrate with an existing RTA and HR, or any of those sort of chop and change options. Um, so if you're evaluating new software to do one of those things, what would your advice be to those attending today?
Barry, me,
Oh,
yes.
yep.
Matt, sorry.
Sorry,
Matt, Barry, one of
Matt.
Look, if you're evaluating the software, I think so. There's a couple of questions that came through in the Q&A. They're asking about what critical data is important, what data is needed to migrate, etc. Again, I think we obviously talked about is understanding the process and the source of truth is important. But when we talk about critical data and critical information, we need to look at the software that we're using. Um, so hey, Elmo is it's an employee centric application and software, and so we got to start with the employee guide. We got to start with that journey. That's obviously critical to send between the different systems. Then when we're starting to talk about Nightingale, we talk about yeah, RTA systems, talk about timesheets, start date, end times, things like that actually come into play. And so this is where it is important to understand the systems that you're running and understand the workflow that you're utilizing between the different systems, because that will unlock the data that is needed in order to move that and integrate with a different system.
Yeah, and we're going to send a resource after today's session, which kind of highlights those 5 key steps you need to look when you start to, sorry, that you need to think about when you need looking to integrate your own system. We have talked a lot about the before or, the preparation, I guess, before an integration. Let's talk about what happens during the integration process. We've touched a lot on the resources required and a commitment to the project, having a champion, understanding the data. Can Barry, you go into a bit more detail about what is required during an integration?
Definitely. So I've been and apologies, I always default to payroll and RTA. That's my passion, but it's all involved in the integrations. So I've been implementing payroll and RTA for now on 15 years now, and one of the biggest thing I always see is we buy some payroll software, some RTA software, some HR software, and just give it all to the payroll person every single time. The payroll person, for the most part, is overloaded to begin with. We could do a show of hands. I'm sure everyone would throw their hands up. So having the resources in place to make this a successful implementation is very important. That can include just someone helping to with the day-to-day processing of the payroll, so the payroll manager can focus on the integration and the implementation of the new systems, for example. Um, it's quite an in-depth process when you bring on a new payroll system if you've ever done it before, because we have to configure, test, parallel, and then we've got the go live kind of rollout. So, adding on an extra 10 to 15 hours sometimes on top of your normal job can be quite daunting. So yeah, resourcing is hugely important. And this is where and because I know Matt being a documentation person, he would love to tell me about documentation as well. But noting down, recording these processes, working out instructions to future-proof your payroll as well can be, yeah, very important.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Barry. Like in terms of documentation, it's quite critical. Um, when you're going through the integrating and with your projects, documentation is key. You can always go back to it. If something that went wrong, you can go back and understand how things went wrong. You can understand your processes better that way. And if there was a new payroll person that comes in or a new HR admin that comes in, they have a better understanding of how things work within your environment, which makes it easier to actually move forward.
Yeah. And I think, I'm not sure if you're going to say this, Matt, but I like this point. We talked about this in our prep, and it was remaining calm. Can you talk a little bit about what your experience with, like, what can happen, what can happen in these processes, and how, what you see to kind of remain calm?
Yeah, so with these projects, they can be quite extensive. They can be challenging. But I guess the reason why I say remain calm is there's always a solution to a problem, whether it's a big or a small one. And I think what we've done so far is guiding our clients to be able to understand their systems and processes. But once you understand those, and when you have these open conversations to your vendor as well, for instance, we can start identifying solutions based on those things. And so, again, yeah, remaining calm is one of those things. You can easily sidetrack a project if if you go into the abyss. But yeah, make sure you remain calm. Documentation absolutely will help, and I think that's for me is key. It's making sure that there is a solution to every problem. It's just a matter of where to go to, who to go to, and how we're going to achieve that together.
Amazing.
Definitely, and I just like to say, I don't know why I keep coming out with so many slogans today, but be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And what that means is just because you've done something for 10, 15 years doesn't mean it's the best way of doing something. So letting go of that can be quite difficult, but that's why we're here to help as well. Especially when you're going from a manual process to a system-based automated process. So yeah, just be open to change, I guess.
I think that one of those when you're going through change and it's so uncomfortable, you know that the thing at the end is going to be the right result, and you know that in theory it's going to be more efficient, it's going to save you time, and it's going to prevent mistakes and all that. But when it's like actually changing how you've done something for a long time, or how the business has done something for a long time, it can be pretty overwhelming. And now I saw this question pop up in the chat, and I also know it's part of our script. So, guys, one of the final questions is how, talking about this, it's not a simple, but in general, sorry, I can't even speak right now. No matter how many ducks in a row you have lined up, it's still going to take some time, is what I'm trying to say. So, Barry, in your experience, how long does a typical payroll integration take from start to finish?
So on average, you're looking at about 12 to 16 weeks. So again, that's on average. It may be quicker for a smaller business, but obviously, if you've got 1,500 employees, it will probably take a little bit longer than that because there's so much more to do. But yeah, 3 months, 4 months is kind of comfortable to say.
Wonder if that you can tell us in the chat if that surprises you guys, 3 to 4 months. But yeah, it's good to know that kind of that timeline, I think. So I just want to sort of summarize where we got to today and then open up. I know we've got some questions in the chat and open up to any more. So from what I took from today, understanding where the friction is before you even start, understand what systems and tools you currently have, where your current processes are falling short. Um, uh, Understanding what your processes are, whether that's in your head or documented, so that when you meet with any software provider, whether that's us or someone else, you have um, that kind of already mapped out and you understand it. Would that be the first step for you guys? Would you add anything to that?
No, that's definitely absolutely spot on, Elise. Definitely.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think for me, it's just you've got it right in your head.
Yep. And then I guess step two, this is a big one Matt talks about a lot, is establishing that single source of truth. So figuring out who owns the employee record, and that will involve, that will involve talking to lots of different business units potentially,
Yeah.
and but in the end will prevent inconsistent or wrong data entering the wrong system. Would you add anything to that, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I said, I harp on about it for most of the webinar, but like the source of truth is important, and especially when you're working with IT, kind of creating that employee experience within your companies. It's important to know the source of truth because that source of truth, obviously it's employee data, IT might want to use that information to be able to issue out security cards, laptops, logins, and stuff like that that we probably are not aware of. And so making sure that when that employee starts on that first day, they have everything that they need. And so that's all quite critical and make sure that we build an ecosystem that will flow through the different systems that you have internally.
Brilliant. And then step three is that connection. You wanting to connect. We wanted to connect all three systems to do all the things that we just said of why you should do that. But where it can fail is if you're trying to keep those old manual workarounds and not having the resources to support that testing cycle, and therefore and not allowing the time, I guess, like that 3 to 4 month period to actually get those systems up and running. So, um, time, resources, an internal champion is what you need to help
Yeah.
get the project
And
up and going.
embrace change. Embrace change.
Embrace change. Awesome. And then I think that will sort of like rounds us off for I guess like the webinar itself. We have some time for questions. I can see that. Sorry, I'm just going to bring that up. Let me look at the so which one will okay, I'm just
There's
gonna
tons of them.
I don't know if I want to. I'll pick one from the any, and then we can go from there. I think this one is asked to be answered anonymously, so I'll leave that. Are there OOTB integrations with ERPs, as you mentioned, Nightingale, etc.? My God, that's a lot
So,
of acronyms.
so out of the box.
Oh,
Um,
right.
so I can, this is Matt's bread and butter, but I can talk on that. So,
Sure.
yes, in those cases, there can be. Those ERPs would own the out of the box integration. But I know a lot of them do have out of the box integrations with our payroll softwares, but I can let Matt speak a bit more on non out of the box integrations as well.
Yeah, look, and I think I've seen a lot of questions that come through in the Q&A and the chat. Do we have integrations with this? And I think Zero is one of them. We do have an out-of-box integration with Zero, but we Elmo has built different integration layers that allow us to integrate with just about anything. But it's just understanding what data needs to move from what. Obviously, we have APIs. We have a way of doing this by CSV, SFTP transfers. Um, I think this is where it is important to understand that data, understand your workflow, understand what data needs to move from what. Because we can build solutions around what that could look like for you. And this is, again, this is the importance of that.
Thanks, Matt. Matt, Melanie, I see your question. I think one of us will take note of your name and get in touch with you because it's specific to a product you have right now and what you're doing. So I don't want to answer that live. But do Almo have connectors to integrate with a payroll platform called ADP? Oh, I know it. Yep.
That's for you, Matt, I think.
Well, we have done so. So it depends on the version of ADP that you have. We have, and so it just depends on, yeah, again, the version that you have. So, but yeah, feel free to kind of reach out to us and we can kind of walk you through some of that, what that looks like.
Thanks. Is there an integration available that allows leave data from payroll to sync into the Almo HR leave dashboard?
Uh,
Um, on you go, Matt.
yeah, can you go back?
Um, the Elmo HR Leave dashboard, what's the word? It interacts with different softwares differently. So it depends on the payroll software you're using, I guess. Matt, is that about right?
Yeah, we can obviously. I think that's traditionally how we do things. So when we have a payroll system, we can ingest leave balances back into our platform, and so creating that employee self-service with HR, it is a possibility. I think just understanding what that looks like and what payroll system that you're using is key as well.
Okay, we've got time for a couple more questions. When transitioning or integrating, I assume, do you recommend running processes old and new side by side for a number of iterations of payroll?
100%. Recommend at least two parallel runs with at least one of them being 100% correct as an absolute minimum. But yes, always.
Thank you. Yep. Okay. Thank you. On average, what kind of data is critical for the migration to Elmo for an implementation?
I'm going to assume talking Elmo HR and payroll there. So uh, employee data is a huge one, obviously. We want to make sure that the correct data is coming across to Elmo. And then when it comes to the payroll side, it's your payroll config data. What have you used in the old system that we can bring across, and what will be used going forward within the Elmo payroll. Obviously, there's a huge difference in scopes here, depending on exactly what we're integrating and what we're doing. If it's just a basic payroll, or if it's a 10 award payroll, for example. But we can scale either way. It can be nice and simple, or we're pulling across full awards. Yeah, so depends on the scope.
Yep. Matt, did you want to add anything to that? That's
No, that pretty much sums it up.
Yep. Um, so I've got a question here around do we, Elmo, have we considered offering a project management solution for implementation? I'm not sure if you're talking, so share about with Elmo or separately, but you've been involved in a couple of implementations, and apart from time, the setup has been poor. So knowing the ins and outs of the software, because you don't know what to ask for, what information to give. Um,
Um, yeah, I mean, you want me yeah, I'll pick out a question. Look, Elmo does have a project management services that we offer, and it's. I think a lot of our clients really appreciate that. But yeah, absolutely. The if you're with Elmo and if you're going through that process right now, I'd speak to us and kind of see what services we can offer in that project management space.
This is an interesting one. Given we have a two-way sync between the two, this is from Annabelle. I'm not sure if by two you mean HR and payroll, or whether you mean payroll and RTA. But given we have a two-way sync between the two, why is the source of truth so important?
Oh, that's a good one.
I
Um,
thought you'd like that.
look, I think that, and I think I mentioned it a couple of times now. Like the source of truth is quite important because if I'm going to speak at Elmo here, but if Elmo is the source of truth, and then you have other systems that are connecting to your environment, for instance, you've got Entra ID, for instance, is connecting to your payroll. But what's happening is that Entra ID is overriding some of the information in payroll. And if Elmo is the source of truth, that could basically, if it's integrating with your payroll, it's writing that information there. And so if Enter ID is overriding that, then you'll have some data mismatches that's going to happen because one is writing over on top of the other, and it's causing friction into the flow of the way your data works.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. We have reached our time. Sorry, everyone. I've just looked at the time and realized. So we see that we've got some unanswered questions. We will take note of those and get back to you individually. We are going to send a couple of resources and ways to get in contact with us post this event to talk through your options, to speak more about your specific system. I think, as the guys have mentioned today, depending on what system you're using, what software you're using, and how your business is set up, can vary how an integration works. And that is what we seek to do. So thank you everyone so much. If you do have time, have to just launch it. If you do have time to do a quick survey for us, let us know how you found today. That would be wonderful. Otherwise, I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Look out for our next webinar coming in January around how AI can help power unlock analytics. Thank you so much, everyone.